A normal day in a residential area, but on the dining table was a strange feast with dishes claimed to be brain-boosting, prepared for a special purpose. The mother brought out a bowl of freshly steamed monkey brains, an extremely hard-to-find dish, and gently placed it on the table. She scooped a spoonful and brought it to the child's mouth, gently urging her son, Shin, to eat quickly to nourish his brain. The child, with a strange device attached to his head, obediently ate the horrifying dish. A heavy silence enveloped the dining table of this peculiar family. Watching her son grimace as he chewed and swallowed the grotesque food, the father's lips suddenly tightened. He angrily slammed the table, roaring that all their efforts to nourish their son's brain were useless, yielding no effect whatsoever. Afterwards, he pointed to the data on the tablet, where the brain surface growth rate chart was just a flat line proving there was no development. The mother worried, thinking it was abnormal for her 6-year-old son's chart not to show growth. She wondered if they had pushed him too hard with his studies. The father roared that they hadn't pushed him enough, that their efforts were still too little compared to the expectations he had for his son. In his rage, he frantically overturned the dining table. He believed that nourishing food was just a useless and time-consuming method. Stronger measures were needed. Suddenly, the tablet beeped. The chart, which had been a flat line, suddenly showed a slight increase. Noticing the unusual signal appearing on the screen, caught the father's attention. Something had just changed. The child stood by the window, silently looking out. Behind him on the table were discarded boxes of brain-boosting supplements. A woman in a red dress walked by. The child pressed his face against the glass, his gaze strangely drawn, as if by an invisible connection. The child pressed closer to the window, drool starting to trickle from his mouth. This abnormal behavior astonished and perplexed his parents. The father could only call his wife's name. The mother suddenly exclaimed, telling her husband she had thought of an entirely new method. Her eyes shone brightly as if she had found a glimmer of hope. And so, a new chapter of obsession began, unveiling their insane plan. That evening, the woman from before had become the boy's tutor. She was a beautiful and sensual young woman. She gently showed him how to solve a difficult math problem, beginning their first lesson. From outside, the couple stealthily watched the entire teaching and learning process of the tutor and student. The father urged his wife to quickly check the data on the tablet to verify the effectiveness of this new method. The mother exclaimed because indeed finding a woman to study with their son had caused the growth data to increase significantly, an unprecedented surge. The father smirked sinisterly. He concluded that even stronger stimuli were needed to maximize brain development. Inside, the female tutor praised the boy's intelligence and affectionately stroked his head. Instantly, the chart on the monitoring device shot up to its highest peak. The father clenched his fist, exclaiming in delight at his discovery. He understood now. The more intimate contact Shin had with women, the more his brain would grow phenomenally. Suddenly, the female tutor felt something gradually changing behind the boy's head. She wondered in terror what it was. A horrifying sensation enveloped her. 8 years later, in the familiar room, beautiful women surrounded Shin, applauding his excellence. A bizarre and unsettling scene. Shin sat among the women, his eyes lifeless. The boy from years ago had now become a teenager, but still wore the strange device on his head, like a sacrificial offering. The mother looked at the tablet with a worried expression. She realized her son's growth data was slowing down. The old method was no longer effective. She reported the situation to her husband. He pondered, admitting he had tried everything, but his son's brain wasn't developing anymore, affecting his performance in the upcoming exam. The father thought, then his eyes became resolute. He concluded it was time to use the final measure, an extreme and dangerous method. That afternoon, the child was tightly bound to a chair with electrodes attached to the device on his head, preparing for a horrifying experiment his own parents were about to conduct. The mother hesitated, asking her husband if this terrifying option was really necessary. But her hesitation came too late. The father brusquely pushed his wife's hand away, snatching the notebook. He roared that everything he did was for their son's good. Then he turned the control knob of the machine. The electric current began to flow. A cold clicking sound echoed, signaling the impending tragedy. The current surged through the child's body, causing him to convulse in pain. The meter shot up, indicating an extremely high current was affecting the young brain. The father exclaimed that this method was indeed effective. The brain surface area had grown remarkably. He believed they should have used this direct and ruthless stimulation method from the beginning for faster results. The boy screamed in extreme agony as his body couldn't withstand the forced development. The father laughed maniacally, continuously turning the control knob to higher levels. Looking at the gradually increasing chart displayed on the tablet, he appeared even more triumphant. The boy's brain swelled, cracking his scalp and protruding outwards. The mother was horrified seeing her son's condition. She worried something was wrong, but the father madly believed it was the brain evolving. The data waves surged wildly. The mother, terrified, pointed at her son's head, saying the wrinkles on his brain seemed to be deepening. The mother screamed to stop, trying to prevent her deranged husband. She lunged forward and pushed her husband to the ground without hesitation. The push caused the electrostimulation machine to fall to the ground. It immediately short-circuited and overloaded. The meter shot up to the maximum level. Shin's body was now enveloped by an extremely strong electric current, turning him into a pitch-black silhouette. Both parents screamed their son's name in horror. They stood frozen before the terrible consequences their own obsession and blind ambition had caused. The mother rushed to embrace her son's deformed body, weeping tragically. She tried to remove the devices tormenting her child, but it was all too late. She looked in horror at her son's deformed brain, stammering, asking her husband what was happening. The brain was still continuing to grow grotesquely right before her eyes. The boy's body began to transform bizarrely, the brain's wrinkles spreading even to his arm. The pain made the boy scream, while his parents watched helplessly. After a while, the brain stopped growing. The boy's pain also gradually subsided. Shin slowly stood up from the chair. The sight before them now left the couple utterly aghast. The father glanced at his son, shockingly realizing what he had done to the child in whom he had placed so much love and hope. Young Shin, with his enormous and deformed brain, was looking up at his parents. He smiled, looked at his parents, and asked an innocent yet chilling question. Now, do I look smart? The professor pondered, his eyes heavy as he looked at the chip, admitting this was his last resort and also his only gamble to salvage some hope. The main control chip was implanted into robot AO2. This was an inescapable disease, an era where evil reigned and love was but a distant memory. The system announced that the automation program had been loaded into AO2. A new life, a new consciousness was gradually forming within this mechanical body. AO2's eyes suddenly opened, glowing with a strange yellow light, signaling the system had successfully started. He had been reborn, but with a completely different purpose than before. The professor looked at his creation, a cyborg carrying a great mission. He entrusted all his hopes, wishing AO2 would complete his unfinished path. He desperately admitted to his associate, Dr. Annie, that humanity was completely without hope, sunk deep into irretrievable decay. He called Annie's name. She too was a robot but possessed complex human-like emotions. On his face, a tear streamed down, his voice full of sorrow. He closed his eyes, his heart at peace, issuing the ultimate command, a command that determined his own tragic fate, ordering her to personally end his life to begin the plan. Annie obeyed, her golden eyes flashing with cold determination. She raised her gun, aimed straight at her creator, and ended his life. At the control center, Annie hurriedly led AO2 away, instructing him to stabilize his new body and absolutely not let the patrol robots discover their whereabouts. But it was too late. The system had detected the two fugitives. Patrol robots were immediately dispatched with the supreme command to eliminate all traitors. AO2 was horrified to realize the enemy was approaching. He recognized the patrol robots. Their eyes showed imminent danger. There was no escape for the two of them. Patrol robots pursued from behind, their voices mechanical and emotionless, ordering the elimination of all traitorous robots. A barrage of bullets tore through the air, aimed straight at the two escapees. A bullet struck Annie squarely in the leg, causing her to collapse. A stream of black liquid flowed from her robotic body. AO2 let out a horrified scream upon seeing his comrade injured and falling onto the cold floor. The pain made Annie grimace, but she still struggled to get up and continue their escape. AO2 roared in indignation, began to return fire, and cursed the mindless machines that only blindly obeyed the orders of the one he considered the malignant tumor of this world. The patrol robots coldly declared they only followed humanity's supreme command and demanded the two traitors lay down their weapons and accept destruction. Annie knew they couldn't resist the numerous robot army and quickly stopped AO2, surprising him, as he didn't understand why she was stopping him. Annie sternly reminded him not to forget the mission Father had entrusted to him. She ordered him to leave her behind to complete the greater task. She emphasized that humanity could activate the self-destruct program at any moment, and only AO2's special chip was the last hope for this world. Annie's words struck AO2's mind like a hammer. He stood stunned, his eyes showing an internal struggle between saving her and fulfilling the great mission. Annie used her last bit of strength to urge AO2 to prioritize the mission, obtain the authority card, and immediately proceed to the surface world. Heeding her words, AO2 used all his strength to dash towards the glass door, shattering it, and jumped out. He clung to the wall of the skyscraper, beginning a perilous escape in the heart of the mechanical city. While climbing, AO2 vowed to himself that he would definitely complete Father's and Dr. Annie's mission, determined to eradicate the final malignant tumor at its root. He landed on another floor, successfully escaping the encirclement. His solitary and perilous journey in Rust City officially began. At the command center, the human leader sat on his chair, coldly interrogating his subordinates about the whereabouts of the remaining fugitive after capturing only one. He roared, anger evident on his face, wrinkled with fury. He would not accept failure from his minions. A patrol robot stood beside Dr. Annie's body, reporting in a monotone voice that the adventurer robot AO2 had jumped from the building and successfully escaped. The leader cursed the robots, calling them unreliable trash. a bunch of useless beings only wasting Earth's resources. With that, he sneered and pressed the button to activate the Rust Disease self-destruct program, punishing the robot for failing its mission. Immediately, the robot clutched its head in extreme agony. Its body began to transform. An internal destruction was underway, following the ruthless command. The patrol robot's entire body began to crack, its metal shell peeling off. The system continuously issued critical error warnings, a painful and meaningless death. The leader laughed gleefully, thinking that if they couldn't complete their tasks, the only thing robots could do was self-destruct to save energy for humanity. The robot collapsed, its body disintegrating in pain, its tragic cries echoing, a miserable end for a loyal servant. One of the henchmen clucked his tongue, seeming regretful. He looked at the pile of scrap metal with greedy eyes. It was indeed a bit wasteful for the robot's components to be destroyed like that. The leader looked at the destroyed robot lying on the ground, snorted contemptuously, thinking this old model robot had no recovery value. Then he rudely kicked away its remaining body parts. Looking at Annie's body, riddled with bullet wounds, the leader smirked cunningly, fiddling with a bullet. He was certain that Robot A02 would soon appear to avenge his kind. The city-wide underground broadcast system blared, requesting all robots to pay attention. An important announcement from the command center was about to be transmitted. The leader stepped up to the broadcast podium, beginning his speech, declaring that the supreme command issued by humanity itself was about to be widely announced. He announced the content of the supreme command, just one word: assemble. Immediately, all robots in the city obeyed, heading towards the square unconsciously. From robots working in offices to military combat robots, all had to proceed to the execution site without resistance. A02, while hiding, felt the pain from the rust disease in his right hand. Suddenly, his system also received the leader's summons. Thanks to the special chip, A02's system blocked the command. However, he still felt a severe headache and wondered what was really happening. A02 saw other robots moving mechanically, repeating that they were executing orders. He realized something bad was about to happen. He was horrified, wondering if the plan to purge all robots had already begun. A sense of extreme unease and anxiety enveloped A02's mind. The leader stood on high, gloating as he watched the robots gradually gather in the square in ever-increasing numbers. When the robots had completely filled the square, he began to send a sarcastic greeting to the sea of robots below. The robots stood motionless, their eyes fixed on the leader, awaiting a new announcement, unaware they were on the brink of extermination. Next, he said that today he had gathered them to thank them for the labor they had provided. He declared that because Earth's resources were depleted, humanity had decided to destroy all robots to conserve energy for its own survival. He smiled sinisterly and ordered Annie, tightly bound, to be brought out. Before everyone, he accused her of assassinating Father, their creator, and gravely violating robot laws. He also said Annie had an accomplice who was very likely hiding in the crowd. A02 hid, suppressing his anger. The leader declared that, as a human, he forgave their betrayal, because today was their doomsday. He shouted the final command, activating the Rust Disease self-destruct program for all robots. Immediately, they began to disintegrate in agony, their systems continuously reporting errors. A horrific scene unfolded as thousands of robots simultaneously self-destructed, screaming in despair. The square turned into a metal graveyard, a brutal massacre. The leader's henchmen laughed gleefully at the grand spectacle. Meanwhile, Annie also began to be affected by the self-destruct order, her body gradually disintegrating. The leader spread his arms, reveling in the destruction, declaring that being destroyed was the final contribution robots could make to humanity. A02's system once again detected the supreme command, but this time he knew he couldn't hesitate. It was time to act to end everything. A02 suddenly attacked, precise shots taking down the guards. Cries of "enemy attack" rang out. Chaos momentarily enveloped the square. The leader was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. He screamed in panic, not understanding why someone could resist his supreme command. A02 stood tall on the steps, the gun in his hand still hot. He removed his hood, revealing his identity. Then, A02 aimed his gun straight at the astonished leader and offered a sarcastic greeting to the self-proclaimed superior human. The leader, still astonished, stammered, questioning how he could resist his command. A02 explained that Father had implanted him with the R1 chip and completed his humanization, making him a semi-human. Thinking A02 was distracted, the leader surreptitiously reached into his pocket, intending to draw his gun in retaliation. But that action was immediately spotted by A02's sharp eyes. He instantly kicked the gun out of his hand. The leader, seeing his plan had failed, was stunned, knowing for sure he had no way out. A02 mocked that without using commands, he was just a weakling and nothing more. Struck to the core, the leader's face showed helplessness mixed with extreme terror. Suddenly, A02's system reported 40% damage. He looked towards Annie in surprise, realizing she was still undergoing self-destruction. The leader recognized the weakness. He smirked sinisterly upon seeing Annie, a new model robot, still not completely destroyed despite the time that had passed. He issued a condition demanding A02 stop, and he would halt Annie's self-destruct program, reminding him she was A02's last comrade. However, A02 still didn't hesitate to pull the trigger, coldly declaring no consideration was needed. The leader fell, utterly astonished. A02 walked over to the dying leader, revealing that his only order was to retrieve the authority card and escape to the surface, while also correcting that Father was not assassinated. The leader now had only one last breath. However, before dying, he still didn't know what A02 wanted. He used his last bit of strength to ask him. A02 smirked, saying to let the culprit explain everything. Then he approached Annie, holding her gun, preparing for the final plan. A02 slowly reached behind him, removing the control chip from the nape of his neck. Immediately after, he inserted it into Annie's head. Her system instantly rebooted, neutralizing the self-destruct command that was corroding her body. Annie's handcuffs shattered. The system announced, "Standby mode deactivated." Surprisingly, Annie slowly opened her eyes, her brilliant golden gaze returning, but this time it was complete freedom. Annie looked at A02 with eyes full of surprise. She pressed him, asking why he had done that. A02 calmly replied that he was carrying out his own mission, a mission that transcended the original command. The leader lay there, gasping, still not understanding why A02 had saved Annie instead of killing him, despite knowing he had the authority card A02 needed. A holographic image was activated. A02 announced this was a recording Father had left for all of humanity, a horrifying truth about to be revealed. Father's image appeared, declaring that when this recording was seen, it meant his final plan had been completely successful. Father explained that humanity itself had ordered the destruction of robots. but those who needed to be destroyed were humans themselves, the greedy beings who were Earth's greatest disease. He revealed a shocking truth: the rust disease he created could also infect humans. Then he raised his own corroding arm, stunning everyone. The leader screamed in terror. He knew that a viral purge was about to begin. A02 continued, explaining that Father had merged with him, turning him into a host, a blood source to nurture a new virus to judge humanity. When A02 removed his shirt, his body had become a host for the virus. He reiterated Father's words that humanity had no hope left. Father declared that the day the recording was released was Judgment Day. A02 pressed his infected hand onto the leader's face, beginning the final purge. A02 used the leader's authority card to open the elevator. He supported Annie as they ascended to the surface together, leaving the chaotic and deadly underground city behind. As the elevator ascended, quotes about decline and judgment echoed, heralding a bloody purge about to unfold on a global scale. The elevator doors opened, revealing A02 and Annie's figures before the light of the surface world. The system announced, "Surface level reached." A02 spoke firmly, declaring a new era, a plan of purging those who had committed atrocities, officially beginning.